This is Wrestling with Wrestling's Past and Present. I'm Tim Kurt.
And I'm Roland Pulis.
And today on episode 26, it is all about Payback 2014. We are hard to believe that's happened 6 years ago, that show.
Yeah, this was the infamous Evolution era in the WWE, right before Rollins turned on his brothers in the Shield. This is also the Blue Tista era.
Mm-hmm.
that trended worldwide on Twitter the night of the pay-per-view, which is and looking at the names on the card, there's a lot of really good names on this card, so it's a good show to go back and look at, see how what's changed in as little as 6 years. I mean, you have somebody like Ambrose, who's Jon Moxley in AEW now, so and I'm not saying that WWE isn't notorious for their turnover, but I mean, you would think 6 years it wouldn't be that big of a turnover, but I mean, there's some names that aren't there no more.
Oh, absolutely. And this pay-per-view actually set up a lot of future storylines, which we'll get into as we go through the matches here. So I think this is kind of an underrated show. You might not think about Payback 2014, but I think there's a lot of meat on the bone here that we're about to dissect.
Yeah, and the 6-year anniversary is actually Monday, so it took place on June 1st of 2014. So I mean, we're pretty close to the 6-year thing. I mean, and if anybody hasn't figured that out by now, that's kind of what we try to do. If we don't have a big current pay-per-view coming up that we can then play off of, we try to go back in time to a pay-per-view that we thought that deserves a second look, that is around the anniversary of what we're doing. So, and I know that a lot of the Conrad podcasts do the same thing, so we try to do our best to not copy him or vice versa. So it's been tough. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, we've had a couple of shows the last couple of weeks where we've had to pull audibles because Arn did it 1 week. And then I think actually Arn was going to do it again next week for one of the shows we were going to do. So we had to do a little bit of audibling. It's tough with Conrad having one show per week or per day. So he has 5 shows a week. So it's sometimes tough for the little guys to get in there, but we're doing the best we can for you.
We are trying the best we can, and we thank you for your support. I mean, episode 26 is here. This is, I think, a lot longer than we both thought we might be on. So
yeah, I mean, and like we're pretty realistic, easy for me to say, on what this show does. I mean, we know it's not, the super popular. We're not Conrad Thompson. We're not that type of level. But if we have 3 fans that religiously listen to us, or 2 or whatever, it's cool to have that. And it's cool that you do, and it's cool that we have this format to just kind of BS wrestling more than just ourselves. It gives us something as fans to go back and look at that we might not even revisit ever. So it does more than one thing for more than a couple people, including us. It's totally worth it, in my opinion. So,
couldn't agree with you more there. But let's get into it. Let's get into Payback 2014. We have 9 total matches, including 8 on the main card and 1 pre-show match. That pre-show match was a mask versus hair match with El Torito, along with Diego and Fernando, getting a win over Hornswoggle with Drew McIntyre, Heath Slater, and Jinder Mahal, the 3-man band. And went about 7 and 15 minutes.
Mind you, only 2 of those people still work in the WWE right now.
Yes. Jinder Mahal and Drew McIntyre.
Yeah, that's it.
And one way, they both former world champion. Well, Drew's current world champion. Jinder's the former world champion. But the rest of the talent in that match is no longer with us. In WWE.
And the Matadors, they tried so many different reincarnations with them, and it's not they didn't have talent. They just it was kind of a personality thing, I think, for those guys, because they had good talent. They just personality-wise didn't connect with the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. And the 3-man band thing kind of dissolved with they each going their separate ways. I mean, Drew McIntyre was released for a while, came back to NXT, and now is your world champion. So he's had quite the career kind of resurgence lately.
But I mean, and I think Hornswoggle too is often, I don't know, it's going to sound horrible, but often underlooked. Or overlooked, or whichever way you want to look at it. I mean, he's a little guy, so I don't want to sound like I'm picking up being small, because Bruce and Conrad did that enough on their podcast this week, actually, if anybody listened to it. And I know they're friends with him and it's whatever, but for what he did for the amount of time he was there, it's amazing to think of different reincarnations he had.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was Vince McMahon's son, he was Finley's son, he was a leprechaun, he was a dirty monster leprechaun thing when he first started out. And I would highly recommend his book to anybody. Life is Short, So Am I by Dylan Postel. I listened to the audiobook. He actually reads the audiobook. Great read. Great listen, I guess, technically. But yeah, no, it's I think people don't appreciate what his contribution was to the business as much as they should sometimes.
No, totally agree there. We kick off the actual show with a singles match for the United States Championship. You have Sheamus getting a win over Cesaro in about 11 and a half minutes. This is before the bar, obviously. Cesaro is with Paul Heyman here. This is when they kind of paired him with Paul as the Heyman guy. Yep. And that was during that gimmick. I actually really liked this match. It was one of my better matches on the show for me personally. I thought it was a great way to kick off the show. A lot of back and forth action with two really talented performers. We've kind of gone into how we felt about Cesaro in the past, but Sheamus too, really good worker. So I was happy with this one. I thought it was a great opener for the show.
Yeah, the match was solid. I love the ending. I'm not a big fan of like the schoolboy, pin endings most of the time, but I love the way the ending was, where Cesaro put him in the swing, and then Sheamus kind of rolled him up afterwards. They were playing that even Cesaro was a little bit, off from spinning him around 20 some odd times.
Mm-hmm.
And, it doesn't always need to be, a brogue kick or a neutralizer or whatever. So, it proves that you can get creative and not leave the fans pissed off, because like I said, the ending of that match actually got me. I was like, oh, that was a very creative way to end the match.
No, definitely agree. And, this kind of sets up a future storyline, as they're going to be one of the more successful tag teams in history with the Bar, coming up a little bit later. That Mick Foley would put them together in storyline.
Yeah, they did a best of series where they fight each other a bunch of times and they ended up together.
Yep, absolutely.
So
next up we have Ryback, which is probably one of the dumbest tag team names in history. It's Curtis Axel and Ryback getting a win over Cody Rhodes and Goldust in about just under 8 minutes here.
Mind you, none of these guys are with the company anymore either.
Nope. Cody and Goldust, now Dustin Rhodes, pretty successful in AEW. We've talked about this. I think Dustin Rhodes is probably having his best matches now in his 50s. He's in such tremendous shape.
I wish I was in his shape now.
Yeah.
So, and I'm 34.
This match, kind of there for me, but it is leading up to the Stardust character. Storyline here is, Cody Rhodes doesn't have any confidence. Him and Goldust keep losing. After this match on Raw, Cody Rhodes would pick a different partner for Goldust. Be R-Truth, Sin Cara. They keep losing, and that leads to the formation of the Stardust character as the new partner for Goldust.
I don't know how you, not to cut you off, but I don't know how you felt about the Stardust character, but I thought it was stupid.
Yeah, I did too.
I liked the storyline. Don't get me wrong, the storyline wasn't a bad storyline, but the payoff is pretty much, we're going to dress your brother just like your brother.
Mm-hmm.
And give you a different name. And originally, from what I remember, Stardust was actually originally going to be Goldust's first name. When they were talking about, this character, Stardust was one of the names that came up as the Goldust name.
Oh, wow.
So I remember that being kind of a weird wrinkle that I remember. I think Pritchard might have been the one that discussed that. So I think I heard it. I'm pretty sure it was a podcast that I heard it on. So it must have been either Pritchard or somebody that had some backstage knowledge of what was going on. But it's too bad too, because I guess it's not too bad because it led to AEW essentially.
Yeah.
So I guess we're lucky that they kind of jerked Cody Rhodes around.
Absolutely. They had a couple of matches in WWE against, Goldust versus Stardust, which were not all that great. Obviously, though, in AEW, they had a phenomenal match at Double or Nothing last year. If you haven't checked it out already, go back and watch that match. It's one of the best matches you're ever going to see.
And then you have the ending of that match, too, where Cody, I don't need a partner, I need a brother.
Mm-hmm.
And if you weren't already emotionally invested, you're blubbering your eyes out when you heard that. It was great. And there was a spot in this match where Axel kind of saved Cody's life. I think he went for a moonsault and he slipped.
Yeah.
On the top rope, and if somebody hadn't been there, I think he would have fallen right on his head. He got lucky that both Curtis Axel and Ryback were both standing there to take the bump, because if they weren't there, I mean, he was going down at like a 90-degree angle. He never made it all the way around. He slipped. He probably would have fallen right on his neck. So thankfully there was somebody there to catch that, because if that had happened, who knows where AEW would be right now.
That's true. That's a really good point. That's if you go back and watch it, it's definitely an awkward moment in the match. Definitely did not go as planned. But yeah, no, it's hard. If that went wrong, if that was totally botched, it's kind of weird to think about what could have happened with the AEW right there. So next up we have Rusev getting a win over Big E by submission with the Accolade in about 3 minutes and 40 seconds. This is when Rusev was doing his Russian sympathizer gimmick. Lana was in her full Russian gimmick here. And they were just kind of portraying Rusev as this big, unbeatable monster. And that's kind of what happened here. He had Big E, did the best he could, but he was overmatched by Rusev. Rusev gets the win with the Accolade.
Yeah, and it's funny too, because you look back on that time, and it's funny how the WWE builds up some of these characters over time just to feed them to other people. Like in this case, he got fed to John Cena eventually.
Yep.
And John Cena kind of crushed it. And it's like, that was cool. Kind of like The Fiend got fed to Goldberg. It's like you build up these characters, and then you just feed them to someone, and it's like, that was totally worth the 1 year. The 1 year build that you guys gave, making this guy look unstoppable, to then just feed him to Big Match John or somebody like that. And I think some of this too is there's a disconnect between the writers and the fans. Some of these writers aren't fans, and I'm not saying that some of the writers aren't good writers, but like the Cesaro thing, not finding anything for him, and then this thing of building. Rusev could still be there right now, being one of the best heel characters, or even when they turned him with the Rusev Day. If they had just got behind him and found something for him to do that made sense, instead of doing the Lana, Bobby Lashley, Rusev bullshit that they did. And again, how I feel about this if you listen to the podcast, and Tim, you know exactly how I feel about this garbage. But
yeah,
it's too bad to look back on it, because Rusev, he had a rocket strapped to him at this time. He was a friggin' monster.
Oh, absolutely. He was a powerhouse.
Yeah, and like you said, Big E's a big boy.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like Big E is Marco Stunt, Big E, and he beat him in under 4 minutes. That's how you make someone be a believable monster, beating someone of equal size, mind you. You're not squashing some enhancement talent or a jobber, quote unquote. I know that term's not really relevant now, but I mean you're not beating the Brooklyn Brawler.
Yeah.
So and it's too bad that they just released Rusev. The type of talent you had for a guy, and Rusev probably in the best shape now than he was then. I mean, he had a belly on him back then. He doesn't have that belly no more. He's in great shape, or was in great shape when they let him go. I don't know what he's up to now, but it's amazing to look back on 6 years and go, wow, you guys screwed that up hardcore.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. What could have been with Rusev if they just booked him properly? I mean, it's crazy to think about what could have been with him.
Mm-hmm.
Next up, we have Bo Dallas versus Kofi Kingston. Bo Dallas is in his Bolieve gimmick. He is riding in a 2-0 undefeated streak. He's really new to the company here. But this is his motivational, kind of inspirational gimmick that he portrays. Bolieve. This match ended in no contest because Kane came out and just kind of destroyed Kofi Kingston here. So this match only went about 30 seconds and, like I said, ended in a no contest.
Yeah, it was weird to look back on Bo Dallas, and it's funny in the last couple of matches you had Axel, they're gone, but then you also had Curtis Axel with Bo Dallas. Curtis Axel's gone, but Bo Dallas, I believe, is still employed.
I believe he is.
And I think some of that is because of his last name. I know they furloughed Mike Rotunda at a bunch of layoffs. But I think, because the Wyatt is Wyndham Rotunda, I think Bo Dallas is still around because of his name right now. And it's too bad, too, because he's not a bad wrestler either. They they missed out on another opportunity to make him. They could have made him, a character in Bray Wyatt's Funhouse. Like, he could have been an actual character. So I don't understand. For a while they teased the Sister Abigail character being real. That never happened. I don't. It's like I said, it blows me away to just think of all the things we've seen in 6 years, and it's like, wow, they missed so bad on this. I mean, Bo Dallas being the real life brother of the Fiend. I mean, Curtis Axel's real name wasn't Curtis Axel. He was Joe Henning. He's Kurt Henning's Mr. Perfect's son. He's Larry the Axe Henning's grandson.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like you have to say, well, Bo Dallas, so that, you know who he is. So for them to, miss on that and not find anything for him to do is amazing too. So like I said, you've got, but then you also have Big E and you have Kofi in the last couple of matches too that have come out of their bad bookings. I mean, Kofi, think of the bad bookings he's overcame in a 10-year career.
Absolutely.
They made fun of him when he lost his Jamaican accent, EX, when they had he starts talking. I remember Triple H stopping him going, wait, weren't you Jamaican? Weren't you supposed to be Jamaican?
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Like so it's amazing to look back just in those couple of matches. I know I kind of went off on a tangent there, but like, it blows my mind to realize some of the talent they've had. And then actually the very next match, not to steal your thunder, but it has Bad News Barrett in it. Another guy. It's like you couldn't do anything with Stu Bennett. Nothing. There's nothing you could do with that guy. Like, it's amazing.
Yeah,
I'm off my soapbox for a minute, anyways.
Well, it's crazy because you have Rusev, Bo Dallas, Bad News Barrett, these guys that they're not doing anything with, but then you have Big E and Kofi Kingston, who they made into the New Day, and that's arguably one of the more successful tag teams in history. So it's like a crapshoot if you're going to make it or not with WWE. It seems like.
Well, and look at Sheamus and Cesaro.
Yeah.
Same thing. They were a successful tag team, and now they're back. Sheamus getting more of a push than Cesaro. Why? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's amazing to look at. Like I said, this is 6 years ago. I mean, they're still doing it now. I mean, you have people more emotionally invested in some of these characters than others, and it's like, why aren't some of these wrestlers are just not getting a fair shake? I mean, I don't know if it's they piss somebody off backstage or if Vince McMahon and his 73-year-old out-of-touch wisdom thinks that that's not how to do it. And I was kind of hoping that as Triple H got more involved in that but even he has less than we all know right now because Vince is still around.
Mm-hmm.
And it's tough because Triple H, even though people say he's supposedly bad for business too, but at least he's a former wrestler and he knows what he had to, terrorizing, and then all the stuff that he had to go through. So like he has to appreciate some of these guys, which is why some of the NXT guys that you don't see them faltering quite as much. I mean, there's still some that do, but it seems like some of them, the bigger ones, do okay for themselves. You have Ricochet and Aleister Black and guys like that who have made a name for themselves elsewhere. AJ Styles being one of them. They didn't have a good NXT, but at least they're still open to that. Whereas before they not have been. It's too bad because Joe Henning had a great look. I mean, why couldn't you just call him Joe Henning?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why did he have to be Curtis Axel or Michael McGillicuddy or whatever the hell you want to call him? Why? Because you don't have anything for him. It's BS. It really is.
No argument for me there. So we mentioned Bad News Barrett. He was going to get a win here over Rob Van Dam. This was for the Intercontinental Championship. That went about 9.5 minutes. I thought it was a pretty good match. Bad News Barrett, there's a spot in here. He went for the bullhammer elbow. He missed, hit the ring post. But then was able somehow to muster some strength to hit another bullhammer on Rob Van Dam to get the win. But yeah, just another example of how things change in 6 years. Both of these guys no longer with the company.
Yeah, and for better or for worse too. It's not. Some of the difference there though is that Rob Van Dam is now 50 or pushing 50 anyways. So I mean, he's still in great shape, but sooner or later he has to go away. But why is somebody like Bad News Barrett not in the company still? I don't. And he's how old is he? I'll look it up right now. He's 39. There's no reason why he couldn't still be there, kicking ass.
And I liked his gimmick. I thought the Bad News gimmick, I got some bad news. I actually liked that gimmick. I thought it was pretty good, a little something different that we haven't seen before. But just for whatever reason, WWE just didn't really see anything in him, I guess.
Yeah, and Rob Van Dam's 49. So, I mean, at this point, he was, 44, 43, 44. on the other side of his career, and Wade Barrett at the time, Bad News Barrett was low 30s. It's like, it's amazing. Like I said, and I can't get over the turnover in 6 years, and not just turnover, but someone like you see the ability of some of these guys, and it's like, wow, WWE, like I said, whether it's the writers, whether it's Cesaro not being big enough or not, well, whatever it is, it's amazing. Some of the and like you said, Bad News Barrett had a rocket on his back with the Nexus gimmick when that it's crazy how they can't keep something going and build the momentum that they already have. Instead, they try to tweak it or they change it. Or one day Vince McMahon rolls out of his bed on the other side of the bed and he's like, "Damn it, we're not doing that anymore." It's like, why? What? I don't get it. It's amazing. Like I said, I know I'm ranting a lot, but seeing this show, it's like, man, they had such good talent then, and a lot of half the guys are gone.
Wow, it's crazy. I mean, it's only 6 years that we're talking about too.
Yeah, we're not talking about 1990. We're 2014.
2014. Next up, we have a last man standing match. You have John Cena getting a win over Bray Wyatt with a little help from the Usos in about 24 minutes here. Bray Wyatt, was down and out. Then Harper and Rowan came out to help him. They attacked John Cena. Then the Usos saved John Cena. I thought this was a great match. A lot of back and forth action, a lot of outside, brawling and stuff like that. I thought the finish was kind of creative, where John Cena hit an AA on some staging cases, and Bray Wyatt went through one of them, and then he put another one on top of him, so there's no chance Bray Wyatt got up, so he could not answer the 10 count. This one I thought it was a really good match, between, two talented guys. Obviously, they were just in the news recently with the Firefly Funhouse match at WrestleMania. But I actually really enjoyed this match.
Yeah, no, it was, it's one of those things that thankfully, Bray Wyatt, another prime example of bad booking or them giving up on a gimmick. I mean, they went with the whole Matt Hardy thing shortly after this. Well, not shortly, but a couple of years after this, and it kind of did away with the character. And it's too bad because when he first came in, he had a rocket strap to him. So I'm glad that, at least he has rebounded to become the Fiend. And congratulations to him and JoJo for having their second child, also this past week. But yeah, it at least going through this match and the storytelling in this match was great. But at least somebody like Bray Wyatt made it out on the other end of what could have been, because you see people like Curtis Axel and guys like Bad News Barrett that have a good look, have a good gimmick, and then it just finally falls off and they're gone. At least Bray Wyatt's been able to reinvent himself, come back. And I think now the character of the Fiend is, other than being squashed by Goldberg, which again, I'm not going to get into that. But it's nice to see somebody persevere through the man, the WWE, the man, and I forgot how over Bray Wyatt was, even as, you see the fireflies and the lights are out, I love the opening, Chicago, we're here. His character was, so good. But yeah, no, the match was, John Cena can, for all the flash he takes for having 5 moves and whatnot, think of all the great matches he's been in over the years.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not because he's the world's best wrestler. He is very Hulk Hogan-like. He has 5 moves. He can do a little bit more than Hogan could, but he knew how to tell a story better than anybody, and he became that guy. And I was, when I saw the match, I'm like, oh man, another John Cena, I didn't have high hopes for the match. I didn't honestly remember it, but no, it was definitely a very good match.
So moving on, we have a singles match for the WWE Divas Championship. You get Paige getting a win over Alicia Fox in about 6.5 minutes. This is obviously before the Women's Evolution. They don't have the Divas Championship anymore. And talk about what a different 6 years make, kind of a theme throughout the show. Paige obviously had to retire early. Alicia Fox really isn't used anymore. I think she's still with the company.
I don't know. She might. I was going to ask you that. I don't know if she is it or not.
Yeah. Either way, they're not using her. So, but yeah, I thought this was a decent match. Women's wrestling was not what it is today, even as soon as 6 years ago. So, considering the era this match was in, I thought it was a pretty good match. But it is just kind of a let me up match, setting up, to give the audience a break between Cena and Wyatt and the Shield Evolution match.
Yeah, it's amazing to think what would have been had Paige been able to stay healthy, and I think Alicia Fox is one of the most underrated women wrestlers of that era. She wasn't a bad wrestler at all.
No.
I know she had some issues of her own. I think it was alcohol that she had a little bit of a battle with. And according to what I just looked it up on online, after months of inactivity, I'm quoting Wikipedia here. After months of inactivity, her WWE profile was moved to the alumni section on October 17th.
Oh wow!
So apparently, as of October 17th of last year, of 2019, she's not with the company anymore. But yeah, it's amazing to think that Paige, being as young as she is and as young as she was then, what she could have been if she didn't get hurt.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fun fact too. I don't know if you know this, but who was the last Divas champion before they converted it over?
Oh boy, I should remember this. The last Divas, wasn't it Nikki Bella?
It was Charlotte Flair.
Was it Charlotte? It was Charlotte Flair.
Yep. Yeah, and that one I knew without even looking it up, because I remember after she won it, they did this thing about they switched it over, they changed it from the Divas title. Now that was when the evolution, the revolution, whatever you want to call it, started.
Mm-hmm.
Of all the NXT girls coming in around that time. That was when Stephanie, they rebranded it. We're not divas, we're women. We're superstars. So it's cool to think of what happened to that division in 6 years too.
Oh, absolutely. Women's wrestling has definitely come such a long way.
Yep.
In 6 years' time. I mean, it's pretty important for the WWE now, where it wasn't as important back then. It's one of their mainstays now.
Yep.
So we get to our main event. This is a no-holds-barred 6-man elimination match. You have The Shield, Ambrose, Reigns, and Rollins getting a win over Evolution here. Batista, Randy Orton, and Triple H in about 31 minutes. This was a clean sweep for The Shield. Batista gets eliminated first. Randy Orton then get eliminated by Ambrose, and then Triple H finally gets eliminated by Roman Reigns. I'm a big Evolution fan. I was a big fan of them back when they had their run in, 2002, 2003. So I was pretty excited to go back and watch this one. I thought this was a really good match. Even though, for me, I don't really... A lot of times longer matches for me kind of lose my interest here. But I thought this one was really well done. I thought it was a little bit surprising. They had the surprise factor with the Shield getting a clean sweep here. So I actually really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, it told a great story too. I mean, the Shield had just beaten Evolution prior to that, so you kind of felt coming into this that it was going to be Evolution's turn. And for a majority of the match, they were dismantling the Shield one by one.
Mm-hmm.
They did the triple powerbomb spot to Roman on the table. And then at one point, they were beating him with a chair back up the ramp, and then Ambrose got involved again. He got taken out, and then Seth Rollins decides to jump off the Tron, which was a pretty cool spot. And then as the match wound down, it was, oh, there goes Batista. And then with a couple minutes, boom, Orton's out. It's like, wow. It's like, then my thought, knowing what happened, but my thought was, well, what would have happened if Triple H had eliminated two guys and it was down to, Triple H and Roman, or Triple H and Rollins, or, somebody. So, I mean, I think they missed an opportunity, but it also made the Shield look really strong, which is too bad, because shortly after this, when Triple H prodded Seth Rollins out of the Shield, pried him away from the Shield, and had him turn on.
It was the next night on Raw that happened.
Yeah, because Batista cried about his booking and left, which is what I believe happened. He was unhappy with his booking, which has been his MO, from when he quit the first time. Mm-hmm. So they had to pull an audible, because this was supposed to continue originally. So, it told a great story, but it left me, looking back, it's still a good match, but it left me wondering what they could have done or what they missed by having them get swept the way they did. Because if knowing that they had Rollins turn on the Shield, wouldn't it have been something if Rollins was the first guy eliminated, or what if the Shield loses and Rollins was the last guy and nobody was there to help him or whatever? Like, I guess it made it more shocking when he did turn. So, I mean, it's good and bad. But I was actually surprised. I forgot how that match went down. I was surprised that it went a clean sweep.
Yeah, I was too. I think nobody really expected that. This was kind of.
I didn't expect it in 2020.
Yeah,
I forgot. It was a great match, and especially the way they were beating the crap out of each other.
Sure, absolutely.
So
I really think this is an underrated show. I mean, there was, your typical couple matches that aren't, there isn't much to it, but I thought there was a lot of good stuff on this card. I'd probably give this probably a 6.5, 7 range. If I had to recommend a match, I'm actually going to recommend the Cesaro-Sheamus match. If I had to pick one off the show, I thought that was a really good match.
I think wrestling-wise, that match struck it hit every chord as a pure wrestling match, a physical wrestling match. And then you have Heyman outside, shouting at Cesaro, telling him how to do it, what to do. I mean, that added to it.
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree that match is probably one of the more underrated matches in recent history, for especially starting a pay-per-view. They started the pay-per-view with a perfect match because that match was great. I totally agree. If I had to if I had to put a number on it, I would probably be in the seven-ish range. I mean, depending on, I wish there was a little bit more from the Evolution. Maybe the match could have been shorter, been a little bit different. And again, it's nitpicking 6 years later. But it's still, for whatever reason, it showed the Shield being dominant, but it left me wanting something else. I don't know what, I don't know. But I don't know what they could have done differently. I know it's easy to take apart something 6 years later. But, I agree that I think probably the overall best wrestling match on that card was Cesaro and Sheamus.
Absolutely. So that's our rundown of Payback 2014. Go check it out if you haven't done so or haven't done so in recent memory. Definitely an underrated show in my opinion. Coming up for you next week, I'm looking forward to getting into this one. It is Super Showdown 2019. This is the infamous Goldberg-Undertaker match show. I think both Roland and I have lots of opinions about that match that we're going to get into. As Connor says about JR, we might have a case of the red ass for you next week.
I mean, it's also in the news too because they're doing the Last Ride documentary series on the Undertaker on the WWE Network. So I mean that makes it a little more in the news, but it also puts us right on the heels of the anniversary of it. So it gives us something to go back and look at. And it's relevant not just because it was 1 year ago, but because the Undertaker is going to be talking about that, I would imagine, in great detail when Goldberg about killed him.
Yeah, I think that's in the next episode that's coming up the night of Backlash.
The next episode for that is coming out on the 14th. So it's going to be they love making you wait. I was like, 3 weeks in a row, this is great. And then they're like, next time on, episode 4, June 14th. Like, damn it.
I know.
It's like, why are you making me wait 3 weeks? But anyways.
If you checked out The Last Ride on WWE Network, we highly recommend it. It's great.
Oh, dude, it's great.
It's awesome. It gives you a different look. It gives you a look at, like I said before, at Mark Calloway as opposed to The Undertaker.
It shows you there is a real person behind the gimmick, and for the longest time you weren't taught to look that with him. He was one of the only guys, one of the very big, kayfabe. They say kayfabe's dead.
Mm-hmm.
He was the kayfabe guy for 20-something years. So.
Absolutely. Definitely go check out and check us out next week when we bring you Super Showdown 2019. Until then, everybody have a great week. I'm Tim Kirk.
And I'm Roland Pulis.
And this is Wrestling with Wrestling's Past and Present.